Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, hosted by Concept 3D. If you like our content, please follow and subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, and all the other streaming platforms. And if you're on Apple specifically, make sure to drop us a comment. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. And today we'll be covering the Supreme Court's decision to dismantle affirmative action in college admissions. And for this topic, I'm really excited to have Concept 3D's very own Jonathan Martin joining us today. Jonathan was recently serving as the Assistant Director of Admissions at Yale, which is why I brought him on, right? He's got a lot of experience in admissions. And he's currently now serving as an account executive at Concept 3D. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan.
Thanks, Shiro. I want to tell all the listeners that Shiro is a real person. I go into the office and I've seen him face to face. So for all of you who are wondering in his virtual world, Shiro is very much flesh and blood. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. I listen to the podcast a ton, and yeah, I think this decision is one that we've been expecting for a while. But hopefully, if you haven't yet prepared for the impact of this, we'll share some ideas and insights into how you can prepare now that it has happened.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I do ask all my guests this as an icebreaker. What do you love about higher ed?
I love just how higher education is, despite its flaws, is still very much the best path to climbing up the socioeconomic ladder. I myself am not a direct beneficiary of that. But my dad was very much like the first person in his family to go to college and university, and just went from being kind of this kid in the Scottish countryside to working for one of the biggest banks in the world, traveling all around the world, had me, my brother, had us along in tow, sent us off to get the best education possible, which included sending us off to Yale. And, that was, within kind of a 40-year period, our family went from solidly working class to being, very much working in international locations, having these fantastic careers. So yeah, universities, I think, very much are still the best path to climbing up that socioeconomic ladder. I felt that personally, but having worked in admissions, I'm also seeing that now. I'm still connected to a bunch of my admits on LinkedIn, and it is amazing to see what they're all doing. High-powered lawyers working for NASA. It's a lot of fun just to see where people are, even within 10 years of being a Yale student.
Right. And working at Yale, I'm sure, you get some of the smartest and brightest students in the country as well. So that probably helps a little bit too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think many people probably have heard this, but we could admit 2 to 3 times as many students if we had the spaces. There's just so much depth.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I myself was waitlisted at Yale and ended up getting off the wait list, but I still remember I had gone into place at University College of London, a couple of other universities in the UK, and I was going to be fine either way. But yeah, I just knew that going to Yale was still very much my first choice, and more than anything, I think just having the right attitude going to college set me up for success. So yeah, these kids who we don't admit, they're certainly still going to be at an elite selected institution, wherever that is.
Definitely. And, mentioning the social economic status, I'm working on a separate content piece outside of this podcast, but recent research shows that if you do drop out of college, the average earnings is 33% as someone who did complete a 2-year or 4-year institution. So, definitely a stark metric and analysis of that actually. So definitely echo that same feeling.
Yeah, yeah, it is pretty scary to have all the debt without the college degree. So yeah, I think even if it's like taking an extra year or two to finish, like as much as possible, like universities got to support students beyond just admitting them, like hopefully getting them to graduate on time. And some of that's a little bit out of their hands, like if
Mm-hmm.
it's like family circumstances, financial reasons, but um, yeah, we definitely
Absolutely.
want to make sure we graduate everyone on time as quickly as possible.
Definitely. So June 29th, right? Supreme Court decides to dismantle affirmative action in college admissions based on two different court cases that combine. This relates with UNC and Harvard. And based on our podcast here, where we talk a lot about marketing, right? Whether that's in admissions and recruitment, alumni, marketing communications, right? We talk a lot about how it relates to these topics. And how do you think this federal decision, will impact admissions and marketing?
Well, just before I answer that, fun fact, June 29th is actually my birthday, so this was like quite the birthday gift.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I think more seriously, admission marketers, enrollment marketing professionals, there's going to be a huge switch to socioeconomic outreach. In the past, I think a lot of universities have probably already been thinking about this, and I know that there was like the Fisher v. Texas case back in like 2015 or 2016. So I think a lot of admissions offices have already been thinking about ways that they could switch to more socioeconomic outreach. Um, but that's the big way. Like universities that have DEI outreach programs may want to consider pivoting to like more socioeconomic based outreach programs if they don't already have them, which is a little
Mm-hmm.
tough because as well, like race, socioeconomics, geography, they're all really tangled up together. So
Mm-hmm.
like an outreach program may have like hit on all of those different factors, but still like maybe known as a DEI outreach program. A lot of admission boxes will have to more explicitly, I think, switch in light of this decision.
Gotcha. And that's because, if I'm understanding correctly, there's ties to different races with social economic factors. That's the point you're making, right?
Yeah, so I think there are you know, parts of this country, like in a city, like rurals that are significantly like socioeconomically disadvantaged, and often like not so much with the rurals necessarily, but like in the cities, you have like more racial diversity and um, I think universities in trying to be as diverse as possible in the past did a lot of outreach to like rural as well as like inner city kind of programs, and as a result, they were you know recruiting students who are diverse on a whole bunch of different factors, race being one of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think uh, this decision though forces universities to be much more explicit about it being socioeconomic outreach as opposed to, or geography outreach as opposed to race. Um, and the reason why I'm saying that is because like this decision impacts like how admissions offices read applications and makes decisions about who to admit, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not a stretch to think that the next decision could impact like outreach programs that are explicitly trying to recruit more racially diverse students. Like those could also potentially be found unconstitutional. So I think that's why admission marketers may have to start looking more seriously at like socioeconomic outreach programs as opposed to what they may have been doing in the past.
Gotcha. Do you think that, making this shift, your recommendation is to make this shift into more social economic factors, right? Do you think that's a disadvantage or an advantage to where we were before? It's a bit of an opinionated, loaded question, but
I don't think it's going to be a disadvantage. I think a lot
hmm
of universities may have already started doing this work, seeing as like
hmm
affirmative action has, potentially could have potentially been removed like earlier than obviously like this year. Um, I think there are uh, organizations like community-based organizations that universities have
hmm
wanted to be partnered with for a really long time. Some of those are like very small and regional, like Posse. Like when I was admissions officer at Colorado was one of the states that I read, and the Aspen Institute used to do this like fantastic college fair where they'd bus in students all like throughout like Western Colorado or Western
hmm
slopes as they'd like to call it to
That's
Aspen
me.
for this like massive college fair. And that group of students was extremely diverse socioeconomically, lots of first generation students. There was also quite a significant amount of like racial diversity. So I think it's those type of organizations that universities should be making a more conscientious effort of connecting with if they don't already do so. Um, there are also some like large national organizations like Questbridge, Jack Kent Cook Foundation,
hmm
that do a really good job of like identifying um, talented students who require financial aid, and those organizations, like working more closely with them, can help to also improve like socioeconomic diversity, while as a side effect, also improving like racial diversity.
Interesting. And when it comes to like how quickly do we need to pivot? Do you have a good understanding of this? Like, let's say, is a part of your strategic plan of your school strategic plan, which usually spans like multiple years, right? Like, do schools need to go in and make changes pretty quickly if race is a part of their explicit language?
Yeah, I think we like fortunately this decision was made in the summer, so there's a few months for people to pivot. But before admissions officers start hitting the road and start doing school visits, I think
hmm
universities, in order to protect themselves from like lawsuits, will um, have to like rein in some like explicit language about like diversity or like racial diversity outreach before the admissions officers start hitting the road. Uh, I think the reason why I'm saying that is because like you know there are organizations like the one that kind of brought the lawsuit to the Supreme Court that have said like in interviews that they are looking potentially not just at higher education but also like corporate diversity outreach
Right.
programs. And so I don't know exactly when those might happen, but if you're a highly visible college or university, there's a very good chance that they will be spending the next, year examining your outreach programs and trying to see if there are any explicit references to like diversity outreach. Um, I think as well, like as looking separately to like private organizations, if you are in a state that you know is Republican led, if there's an attorney general who is like very like outwardly spoke like outwardly saying I'm going to take a look at
hmm
DEI outreach programs, then again that's going to force I think a lot of universities to try and pivot in the next 2 or 3 months.
Quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense. What do you have any other opinions on, this happening and what the future might look like for higher ed institutions, for admissions counselors, admissions marketers?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of attention on affirmative action, but the vast majority of admission marketers, I don't think will have to significantly change anything that they're doing right now. Affirmative action, I think, only impacts like 100 to 200 selective institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're listening to this, like, there's a pretty good chance that like this won't affect your work at all. But if you are from one of those institutions that has used affirmative action in the past, that does, historically have like DEI outreach programs, I think this will have a massive impact. And there are other things that potentially like you could be looking at if you're still looking to try and recruit as diverse a class as possible. You know, whether that's zip code or being more like financial or like I think in the past people have said like they're a need blind institution. Maybe even going further than that and becoming like a need conscious institution and putting the thumb on the scale for students of you know who are applying for financial aid and like that. Those are potentially ways in which we could see more universities like maintain diversity, but by doing it like through these like more race neutral approaches.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I'm also thinking, as a marketer myself, like, how does that impact like content I'm creating to do outreach to students as well, right? Because that's not really like that's before the admissions process, right? Like that's before an application, but I'm wondering how it would affect that. Like, are there going to be states and policing that's going to be more strict around that? Like, you're outreaching to so much to a certain demographic or to a certain race. Like, I wonder how it's going to make an impact at the top level. So, like, one specific example is like, let's say I have a social media account, a TikTok account for a university, and I do a lot of top of funnel marketing right there, right? Getting students engaged with the school, with
Hmm.
the school's values, what programs they have, what student life is like, and that all of that is introduced through social media super early on, right? Like, before their students maybe even start thinking about college, and how that content is maybe created for a certain demographic. Like, do you think there's going to have an effect on that based on this decision?
I don't think content itself will be impacted. Like you still want to have like a diverse range of student profiles that you're promoting. You do want to highlight like the resources you have on campus, like the cultural centers, the like I think at Yale we had like La Casa and the AFAM house. Like those are things that you still very much want to promote. Like it's not unconstitutional to talk about uh, like the resources you have, the community that already exists on campus. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's very much like the strategy and the implementation of that. Like it's like, are you explicitly just recruiting like one type, one racial group of students? Like that's the sort of thing that I think could get you into trouble as like a
Right.
potential like follow up to the Supreme Court justice. But content itself, like I think this is one of the kind of effects of this
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court decision. It's gonna like chill or like have a lot of people feeling nervous about what they can say, but like
Right.
universities like should still be exercising their First Amendment rights and saying like, hey, we have like this amazing community, like come join La Casa, come join the AFAM house. Um, Here are students who like you should be interested in. So I think again like content should not be impacted, but
Mm-hmm.
that is not to say that a lot of people are like second guessing themselves because of this
Right.
decision.
I was thinking the same thing. If this decision came in and let's say like I had a diversity goal based on race 6
Hmm.
months ago and I was creating a lot of content tailoring to that, like it would make me think twice. And that would probably also be removed explicitly from any strategy documents, right? That's in writing, because that's probably where all the change will start, is whatever's written. So I
Yeah,
feel like that would make a slight impact there, but I
yeah.
I think that what you're saying about like changing the narrative a little bit to the socioeconomic demographic factor may kind of relieve that, because I think, if you're in admissions and in higher ed, you have a good understanding of how all those things are related anyways.
Yeah, like those kind of internal documents that, an admissions officer may put together. Like to clarify something, because I think sometimes there is like a lot of miscommunication about like what affirmative action is. Like the Supreme Court years ago, out ruled out like quotas of any type. Like that was considered unconstitutional. Um, but universities saying like, oh, I want to like increase the diversity, like just more broadly speaking about like wanting to like make a class that's more representative of America, like without any specific targets, like that is very much was okay up until like my birthday on June 29th. So yeah, I do want to kind of distinguish that like that has like quotas have always been or have been for a very long time now unconstitutional, but it's now just like even saying like I want to more broadly improve diversity, like that's or just like racial diversity, that's now no longer allowed. But again, socioeconomics is fair play, geographic diversity is fair play, um, and we live in a country where like geography, socioeconomics, and race are just very entangled with each other. Um, so you could still build a very diverse class using, I believe, like was it race neutral or yeah, race neutral outreach strategies, like affirmative action, but for like socioeconomics. That said, I don't know, like we'll see like just how easy it is to continue to build like a racially diverse class using race neutral methods. I think there have been other institutions in states where it's been banned, where they have struggled to maintain that diversity. But yeah, I like right now, I think the switch to socioeconomic focus is what we'll see a lot of admissions marketers do.
Love that. And as we talk about all these suggestions and opinions, like thought it'd be good to throw in a disclaimer that none of this information is not legal advice. And so, these are all opinions and conversational recommendations and thoughts we have about this. So again, this is not any legal advice. I feel like we need to throw that out there. It's the first time I've had to say that.
I feel like if you have like most admissions officers probably have had a conversation with their general counsel and are now internally discussing like how do you like stay in compliance with the recent decision. So talk to your general counsel. Don't don't ask us for legal advice. But yeah, I think if you haven't had that conversation yet, you should definitely be having that conversation soon.
Love it. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm wondering if any of our listeners want to reach out and connect with you. Where's a good place to go?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So Jonathan Martin, so Martin, and that's just the best way to connect with me. And if you're connected with Shiro, I'm probably just like one connection away.
Yep. Yeah, and Jonathan does repost some pretty good higher ed content. Just because he has a background in higher ed, he knows, important subjects and important topics, and usually share content from another news feed. And that's how I get a lot of my higher ed information is through Jonathan. So definitely throw him a follow. It'll be worth it.
Yeah. Thanks, Shiro. I read a ton of articles every morning just about higher education explicitly. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and thanks for our listeners for tuning in. Make sure to follow us and subscribe to us on your various podcast channels, and throw us a comment in Apple Podcasts. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, we would really appreciate it. And tune in for the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.